All right, welcome into Big Hitters Only. It is Friday, March 21st at 6:30 p.m., 10 minutes after the Tar Heels fall to Ole Miss, 71-64. The season is over. Actually, I don't know the UNC's final record here, but season's over. RJ Davis has played his last game as a Tar Heel. What a crazy freaking game. UNC's final record is 23-14, 13-7 in the ACC. Just a weird game. Go down 18 in the first half, increases that to 22 in the second half, and then come back with an amazing run in kind of the second half of the second half, and then just couldn't make the shots late. And then Sean Padula hit a huge three to kind of put the dagger in UNC season. Drake Powell had a great shot late, open shot that kind of would have made it a closer game. Didn't fall. We have Connor here, producer Connor, back from a trip to Nashville, and Mike Hardison with the Rowback UNC sweatshirt. Haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
Would love to get Rowback on as a sponsor here soon. Quickly, Delta Spirits, drink deltaspirits.com. Promo code BHO. We'll talk about them more later in the podcast. Mike, you mentioned it off the air here, microcosm of UNC season, just a crazy game, fun game there in the second half, just not enough, kind of defines, I think, this UNC team, just not enough to get over the top. Your early thoughts, initial thoughts on this game. We're going to talk game first and then we'll wrap up the season a little bit at the end of the podcast.
Yeah. Before we kick it off too much, RJ Davis's last game, want to take space for that because, what a hell of a career. I mean, the very high highs, the very low lows. The guy stuck with Carolina for 5 years, all-time leading three-point shooter. Second all-time in UNC points, third all-time ACC in points. I think. Just an incredible career, and hate to see him go out like this. Didn't have a particularly great game. Had some impressive plays there towards the end. But just want to start that from the top because I think sometimes that can kind of get lost in the overall frustration of the season. Is that this is a player that is is emblematic of Carolina basketball, in my opinion. It's going to be honored up in the rafters and will be one of those players that's talked about for years to come. As to the game, honestly, kind of the perfect ending for the season. I mean, we've seen this game, probably 5 to 10 times this year, where Carolina gets down double digits, they mess around, they come out flat, they're not hitting shots, they're not making smart decisions, and then in the second half something clicks and they go on a run, their defense improves, and they make a run and they, with the exception of maybe one or two games, they've come up short every time in the last few minutes. That is the season. And I think we are, and we'll get into it later, but we're treading into dangerous territory for next year because every result is going to be a reflection of Hubert Davis as a coach. This game was frustrating for a multitude of reasons, right? Van Allen Lubin had some fantastic plays, but got into foul trouble. Jalen Washington had some really great moments, but also is getting abused on defense. We could not shoot a three to save our life, which I feel like everyone after watching the San Diego State game knew this was coming, where we were going to shoot lights out in that game, and the next game we would just come crashing back down to earth. It is sadly not unexpected. I think we all watched this game, and it was like watching the same movie and hoping for a different ending.
Yeah, Ole Miss, man. I mean, they just could not miss to start off. And UNC left them open a lot. So I think there was some defensive breakdowns in the first 10 minutes of the game, getting lost on screens and wide open threes. But also, sometimes it's just hard. If you hit everything, it's really, there's not much you can do. So that's what got UNC down. And then UNC just didn't hit many threes. I mean, RJ was 1 for 8 from 3. UNC's not going to win many games when your best 3-point shooter is 1 for 8. He makes 2 more, and UNC wins this game. 5 for 24. UNC was from 3 for 20.8%, and just got too big of a hole. But that run was a hell of a run. Jalen Washington had some awful moments in the first half. I thought he was pretty good in the second half when they needed him, when he came in for Van Allen Lubin. Van Allen Lubin, again, shows his vast improvement from what we saw him in the first half of the season to now. He's a player I would definitely want back next season on UNC's roster. Connor, give me your initial takes. I'm going to turn off this TV behind me. Go ahead and give us your thoughts, your initial takes, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'll bounce off what Mike said about the microcosm of the season as a whole. I've got it written down here. Early in the year, Kansas, 3-point loss after being down by 20. Michigan State, 3-point loss after being down by 14. Florida, 6-point loss after being down by 17. And Duke in the ACC tournament, 3-point loss after being down 24 points. And once again today, lose by 7, close at the end after being down 22 points in this game. It's a microcosm of the season. It is. And it hurts to get your hopes up like that. And it hurts as a Carolina fan to watch them come out and battle in the second half and battle all the way back and come up just short, because you know what happens when you go down by 20 in the first half? You can't afford to miss a couple layups. You can't have RJ Davis miss a couple threes in the second half. You can't have Padula hit a big three and still have a chance to come back and win the game because you were down 20. You have to be perfect in the last 10 minutes when you put yourself in that position. And they weren't today. In college basketball, that's so rare to play mistake-free, perfect basketball for 10, 12 minutes to come out on top. And like we saw today, they clawed back. They were down by 4 points, and it just wasn't enough. So You're right, Mike. Microcosm of the season, and we're in for an interesting offseason for sure.
Do y'all think that, like, coming out flat like that, as UNC did in this game and obviously in a couple games throughout the season, is on coaching?
It has to be. It has to be, right? Like, you see what the players are capable of, right? And, like, you've got 18 to 23-year-old kids playing basketball. Like, it's your job to push the right buttons. And they seem to do that at halftime or like 5 minutes or the first TV timeout of the second half. They seem to know how to do that. So why is it that our pregame preparation consistently comes out flat? And like, let's be completely honest here. San Diego State was not a team that was capable of taking advantage of our mistakes. We had 7 turnovers in the first 5 minutes of that game too. We did that, we did the same thing with Ole Miss. Ole Miss was just able to take advantage of it. So like, it's something about the coaching and like getting the team to lock in, and like I don't think you can put it all on the players. I mean, go ahead.
Well, I was bouncing off that point, Mike. Is preparation is one thing. Dre Davis for Ole Miss, 31% from 3 on the season. I get it. You want to play off him a little bit. You want him to be the one to beat you. But these are warm-up shots. He started the game 3 for 3. He is wide open. I don't care if you're 30%, 40%, or 10%. This is a high-level D1 athlete. It's like if he's wide open like that at the top of the key, chances are it's going to go in. So I could not believe that there were no adjustments made throughout the whole first half. It was like, okay, let's let him beat us. He made 3 in a row to start the game. So it's stuff like that that's lack of preparation. You're right.
The thing that drives me insane is, you saw the Ole Miss pull away in the first half, and it largely came when we sent Van Allen Lubin and Seth Trimble to the bench with 2 fouls. All right, those are experienced players. You have to stop with the black and white coaching philosophy where you get 2 fouls, you're out for the first half. You pull them out. Like that. Yeah. That can't happen. With the season on the line, that can't happen. Those have been 2 of your best defensive players, best players overall recently, or in the game today at bare minimum. And you sat them on the bench for an extended period of time in which Ole Miss got an 18-point halftime lead. And so, yeah, I put like most of this on coaching. I know that's unpopular. I know a lot of people in the UNC media ecosystem want to put this on the players and players not caring or NIL and stuff like that. But like at a certain point, leadership, like as a leader, you are responsible and you are accountable for this. And if it were a one-time thing, if we saw this once or twice and it was just like, hey, bad day, bad luck, I get it. This is a consistent trend. The inconsistency is consistent. Mm-hmm. And so you have,
as a bar.
Leader, yeah. As a leader, you have to be accountable for that.
Yeah, Mike's fired up. I love it. Yeah, I think a trend you blame coaching. I think in a single game you can be like, players at some point have to step up and like, no, these are 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Like they need to know to bring it. There's just a level of intensity you have to bring in all these games, like against Duke in the NCAA tournament. I think they should have gone to Seth Trimble early because they looking at Ole Miss's roster, they weren't super tall, but their guards were big. And so Seth Trimble just makes so much more sense on defensively. I thought he had a really good game. And I think when you saw Jan Washington get owned in the post, you're like, dude, he cannot be in this game. And look, he played a lot better in the second half, but man, he was a stretch there where it was just like they were going right at him. I mean, I don't even know where to turn on this podcast.
Well, you would think, Ross, that, game 37, whatever it was today,
Yeah.
they'd finally figure it out, like, hey, we can't go down by 20 in the first half. I thought they had maybe put that behind them on that win streak to end the regular season. Even the game against Duke, they battled back, and I just thought that was mostly behind this Carolina team. And with the season on the line, it was the same thing. Not to beat a dead horse, but it was the same thing. And I just didn't expect that in a do-or-die game. So you can blame the players, you can blame the coaching. I think their answer is somewhere in between. I know that's a boring answer, but it's got to be somewhere in between.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I'm not an X-Nose guys, but I wonder what in-game adjustments they made in the first half. Like, get a timeout early, because obviously something was happening defensively that was allowing them to get so many open threes.
They were
got so many
going. They were
good
going
looks.
under. They were going under. I mean, that was the problem the entire game.
UNC's huge on it. Hubert Davis switches. Roy never switched. It's like kind of like a man thing, like man to man. You fight through screens, you go over screens, and you don't switch. Hubert's big on switching. That's that's a massive strategic move that he does. They're getting so open. So like at some point, I mean, I would have called timeout earlier in that run. They eventually got one, I think. Called earlier.
It was
reset.
11-2.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, where do you want to go with this? I mean, what a comeback. I mean, I thought defensively, Drake Powell was great in that comeback. Van Allen Lubin was huge. He stepped out for a bit, and Jalen Washington stepped up. Seth Trimble was big. Ian Jackson didn't provide much. Some erratic turnovers by both Cadeau and Ian Jackson. But Cadeau, dude, I will give him, for as much hate as he gets, he was like tough, feisty, aggressive, nasty, and during that run, man, some of his defense and getting his nose in there was huge too. One more three by RJ or Elliott would have been the difference this game. Drake as well. That was it, man. That's how most games go. Other than that, what else y'all think? I mean, what were y'all thinking during that run?
Well, real quick, the point I want to touch on that is the broadcast touched on this a lot. It seemed like Carolina's problem, especially in the first half, they would drive to the rim, Elliott Cadeau specifically, and expect contact. They would seek out contact. Ole Miss was disciplined enough to go straight up and not foul him. So all of a sudden, if you're Elliott Cadeau, you're going up expecting to get bumped. You're missing the layup. There were so many missed shots inside. That put Carolina down early. And yeah, I give you credit on that. Cracking another one. I'll give you credit on that, Ross. Cadeau did play his ass off, hard nose. But if we could just get him to do that on defense and then just slow it down and calm it down a little bit on offense, I think you got to find that perfect medium.
And it was a classic game. We talk about this all year, Connor, with me, you, and Spencer. Short guards. That was never more evident in the first half with RJ and Cadeau missing, 3 or 4 layups each at the rim because they're just too short. And I think we'll see a big move away from that next season. Mike?
One thing that I think should terrify every Carolina basketball fan, because it has been associated with our identity for basically the entirety of Carolina basketball, is that we have been bad in transition. We saw that over and over and over again. We see hero ball. They're not making the smart passes. They're getting stuffed at the rim. Somewhat because of size, somewhat because of just bad decisions, right? We saw multiple times this game and several others recently where you would have a single guard drive against 2 or 3 people. That's just not smart, okay? And then we also saw our big men just get bullied and not fighting for rebounds. I mean, I think the rebounding differential in this game, we only got out-rebounded by 6, and I think a lot of the differential got made up during that run. But in the first half, it was awful. At one point towards the end of the second half, we were 9 of 21 for layups, right? Like
seeking out contact, yeah.
They're going for contact and they're not finding it. And that is going to keep you up at night, and that's going to keep the staff up at night as we move into the next year, because that's not Carolina basketball. I mean, you can fine tune Carolina basketball, and I think a lot of the staff's emphasis on finding shooters is definitely one that needs to happen. But it seems like it's hit or miss depending upon who we get in the portal. And then when you whiff on a big, which I like, to be frank, and I think the next logical step in this conversation is talking transfer portal in the offseason. But I feel like the season was kind of cooked as soon as we miss on a big, right? As soon as we came into the season, Jalen Washington is our starting 5.
You didn't like the K. Tyson run into the first half?
Yeah, what was that? He got some extended run.
It's like throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks, honestly.
Yeah.
But Kay Tyson looked like he didn't belong out there those last 5 minutes of the
and
first
he
half.
hasn't. I don't want to rag on the kid because clearly, like, it has been a season to forget for him, and like I think that is. I mean, it's a bust, right? There's no better way to describe it. Like, he is our biggest transfer portal bust that we've had.
Is he back next year? He's got one more year, right? Is he coming back?
Maybe.
No.
I don't think so.
No way.
Ross with an emphatic no.
He's got. I mean, he's making $600K this year, as reported on Big Hitters Only by Adam Smith. I'm not sure we'll hear from Adam Smith much more on his podcast. That was weird.
All-time bad guy. Good for him.
Hey, $600K. I saw on Instagram. He's got a hot girlfriend. Good for him. Go down a level. Get paid down a level, and yeah.
I wonder if we could figure out how many points or how many dollars per points he made.
Yeah.
Hey, I did this not long ago.
Oh, God.
He had 36 in the ACC.
Going in after the game against Virginia Tech, so near the end of the year, he had 81 points. That's $7,407.41 per point.
It's unreal, man.
Following the Virginia Tech game. So
Good
there
work
you go,
if
Mike.
you can get it. All right. Let's I mean, anything left from this game? I mean, look, it ultimately comes down to shooting always. Like, UNC hits a couple. Look, they shot over 60% from three against San Diego State. They shoot 27 point. Oh, sorry, that's first half. We pull up home visitor stats. They shoot 20.8% from three, 5 for 24. They hit 2 more threes at any point in this game, and it's a completely different thing. Like, if Drake hits that 3, I think it's a 1-point game there. RJ hits 2 more. I mean, him going 1 for 8 this year in the closing game. Last year, I think he went 1 for 9 or 0 for 9 against Alabama.
I think he was 1 for 8. I think he was 1 for 8 too. So
last year,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think RJ had a really bad shooting game. I mean, he just looked off. He got some good looks and looked off, and that's the ball game there. I mean, you can cut it any way you want to cut it, but you make a couple more shots, and Ole Miss was on fire in the first half. They went cold in the second half. So, anything else on this game?
I blame Seth Davis. I mean, I knew Seth Davis picked us, man. Like, that was game over.
That? You see, he had a ram on Seth there.
Yeah, he brought a ram out. Like, man, you want to talk about getting a bag for providing very little? Let's talk Seth Davis.
Yeah, get him. Let's do point per dollar per good point made.
Yeah.
Chris Beard is a massive nose. That's all I got.
The most punchable face in college basketball right now to me. Yeah. I don't know about you guys.
For a variety of reasons.
Little shit goatee, headband. Vidal Lubin, I thought he's great, man. I'm excited for what he can become next year. And he should be a starter next year as a starting. God, maybe not starter. Maybe a backup. I don't think
it's a starter.
You would hope not, but because the 4 needs to be a shooter. But he is would be a really, really good 6-man playing the 4 and the 5 next year for UNC. Tough. 100%. Jalen Withers look. He high ankle sprain from my diagnosis. It's probably his last game was Tar Heel 2. RJ Davis' last game. Those are the main guys we talk about. All right, briefly, because I think we'll do a podcast maybe later in the week or in a week or two about kind of wrapping up the season. So let's quickly get y'all's thoughts. The transfer portal opens. Actually, let's do a little ad read here. Gonna go Delta Spirits. Hey, sales have slowed down. Because I don't think our audience is our big drug users. But look, deltaspirits.com, drinkdeltaspirits.com, BHO10. Try it out. If you were trying to move away from alcohol, these are great little sodas here. After work, you and the wife, the girlfriend, the husband. I'll be interested to see how many females listen to this podcast. Try drinkdeltaspirits.com, BHO10. Can really, if you're looking to move away from alcohol and relax and decompress after work, it's a great option for those. DrinkDeltaSpirits.com, BHO10.
Great option after a disappointing basketball season. Stress is over. Take the edge off. Relax a little bit.
Just melt into the couch. And we're looking for sponsors. If this podcast continues next year, I'm going to be actively searching for sponsors into the Bill Belichick era at UNC.
Throwback, please.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd probably get promo code for Roback. All right, next season, the transfer portal, which in my real job with CBS and 24/7 Sports, big part of it, it opens on Monday. Monday morning, you can have players in the transfer portal. It's a 30-day window. You're going to expect some UNC players to enter. I think we're going to see a massive roster change inside Carolina. Promote them. They're going to be on it. I think let's just go through the roster here, guys. Jump in if you want. I think you can see Elliott enter. Elliott Cadeau. I think you could see Seth Trimble enter.
I've been on that all year. I think Trimble had one foot out the door last summer and, might be change of scenery.
Yeah, I think Ian Jackson goes NBA route, and then I think Drake Powell is a big decision. I think the biggest thing is keep Drake Powell and try to keep Trimble, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. So you're looking at a really slim roster of – I can see Jalen Washington transferring as well. So you're looking at potentially only one returning starter in Drake Powell. And then maybe Seth Trimble. I don't know what Cadeau is going to do. So what do y'all think about next year?
Yeah, I think the priority needs to be bringing back Drake Powell. He did not have a great game today. Hit a couple good shots, and overall for the season, 37% from three. Very good defensively. I think you can kind of build around him, slot him into the three. You have Caleb Wilson coming in at the 4, and then Venal Lubin, I think, coming off the bench as a 6-man to spot the 4 or 5. It's probably your best bet. With regards to our guards, losing RJ, Elliott, and Seth, I don't think you can't have that as your backcourt, right? And to be frank, you can't start Seth the way he's been shooting. He's a great defensive player, really a feisty guard. But I just don't see Seth Trimble wanting to come off the bench, and I think that's the only way you could really retain him and pitch that correctly. So it really comes down to, can you and do you want to bring Elliott Cadeau back? I think, I'm praying that there's development there, because I think you see it in spots where like that kid's a basketball player, and like there are moments where it's like this kid gets it. I think it's a maturity thing, and I think it's a development thing. And one of my biggest knocks on the staff is I feel like we don't develop players. I feel like consistently, like, we've seen players not develop. I don't know about Ian Jackson. I think his stock has plummeted. And like, if you're Ian Jackson, you come in as a potential lottery pick, and then you go to Carolina, you're not even a first round grade. To me, that screams transfer. And like, I wouldn't blame him. He had a run of 6 or 7 games, which were incredible, and it really felt like he was coming on. It was going to be the guy. And then he just kind of disappeared. And I don't know what happened there. But, without getting into details, big item is getting Drake back. Figure out the financial compensation package you need for that. But then in general, you might need a reset. Like, frankly, you might need a reset.
What if you bring Ian Jackson back? I think he just goes pro. You kind of opened up something there, Mike, but you bring him up and give him the keys to the car at the 2, Drake at the 3, bring in a stud point guard in the transfer portal, and roll from there. That's great. But I think Ian's mind is I think he wanted to be a one and done. And I think he'd still be a first-round pick. You see some of the moves he does, like against San Diego State. I think he's still a first-round pick. I made a bet today with a buddy. Shout out John Owner. $20 bet that he's a first-round pick. But, it's a complete rebuild. It's a huge year for Hubert Davis. Like, he has to hit on, like... Jim Tanner. He has to hit on, like, 3 starters. That's hard to do. Like, the transfer thing, look at Kansas. Kansas didn't hit on many transfers. They had a horrible season. They're out in the first round. Like, it's hard to hit on, 3 or 4 transfers, which UNC is going to need to do if we expect the exodus we're expecting. Connor, you got anything for us?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what Ian Jackson's mock draft is in a couple weeks. I'll be curious to see where they have him, because if you're Carolina, if you're Hubert Davis in the front office for Carolina basketball now, you throw everything you can. Number 1, to keep Drake Powell, like you said, Mike. But number 2, to keep Ian Jackson. Hey, Ian Jackson, if you're maybe 28, 29, you might be a first rounder. Maybe you fall to the second round. Here's a shit ton of NIL money. Come back. Here's the keys to the offense. There's not going to be 4 guards clogging up the backcourt like this year. We'll guarantee you play 34 minutes a game no matter what. Here's the keys to the offense. You got to at least try that, because I think Ian Jackson, if he comes back one more year, has the potential to be really special next year. And as far as the rest of the roster goes, hit on a big man, because as much as I love Lubin, you need somebody that's 6'10 or above. We saw that today. Ole Miss center was 6'9", 6'10", 250. He was a bully down there. So you need depth, and you need, like you said, Ross, to hit on 2 or 3 starters, and hopefully Cadeau and or Trimble stays, one of the two. But you're right. That can't be your backcourt. That can't be your backcourt going into next year.
I mean, I don't think UNC fans want Cadeau back.
I think you're right.
Like, I just think it's kind of the short guard things ran its course. I mean, but when he is good, he's good. I think you got to focus on shooters too. Like, get you a 4 who can shoot, definitely a 2 who can shoot, a 3 who can bring in shooters. Like, look at Kerwin Walton for Texas Tech yesterday.
Tyler Nickel for Vandy too.
Yeah, just bring in guys who you think you can shoot, and then you sign 4, and if 2 hit, you're good there. It's like in football, you bring as many quarterbacks as you can get, hoping 1 hits. Mike,
we brought in Cade Tyson, right? Who's supposed to be our shooter. I think the honest to God problem is that when Carolina played its best this year, in the stretches against Duke in the ACC tournament game and different stretches across this little 12, 13 game finish over the year, was when Van Allen Lubin was playing out of his mind and taking all the attention down in the post, right? Mm-hmm. And he's not capable of that for 40 minutes, and that's unfair to ask for a guy his size. But to me, that was just telling that if you have a Armando Bacot type player at the 5, it's going to open things up for him. I wonder how much, RJ's slight regression, he ended up pretty decent in ACC play from 3-point range, but I wonder how much of that is because no one cared about the post. I mean, how many times is there a freeze frame on Carolina? You got 5 guys outside the 3-point line, right? Yeah. And so I think number 1 priority is you have to go nail the big, and then you have to get a starting caliber pick. You have Caleb Wilson coming in. That's awesome. You have to slot him in to start. You have to hope you get hopefully one of Ian, Seth, and Elliott back. Have to hope you get Drake back. But there's a lot. There's a lot on the line this portal season. And good luck, Jim Tanner. Hopefully he's, from everything I've heard, he's awesome. And fingers and toes are crossed that this guy's the real deal because we need it. That said, I think next season is going to be, unless we start out hot, is going to be rough. Just in terms of every game, every loss is going to be an indictment on Hubert Davis.
It's huge for Hubert. It's a big year for him, and he has to replace so much talent. So it's there's so much pressure that he has to nail the transfer portal. And Jim Tanner.
Aren't you guys, come on, you got to be a little bit of a believer in Elliott Cadeau playing with a good big man, right? His passing, if we had a legitimate 5 that could catch the ball and finish at the rim, Van Allen Lubin's been great, but he's 6'8". If we had a legitimate 6'11", 7-footer playing with Cadeau,
I'm with you.
I think that would make him go from here to here.
We saw some alley-oops with Van Allen Lubin towards down the stretch that were awesome. I think Elliott could be a lot better with a legitimate starting 5. Someone that doesn't just knife hand the ball when they try to catch it, like some 5s to remain nameless that I don't think will be on UNC's roster next year.
If Elliott comes back, then the 2 guard has to be a 6'4" or above. I mean, I love Seth Trimble come back. I love Seth. I think he's physical. He's so athletic. I don't know, like you said, I think it was Mike, you said you can't have 2 bad shooters at the 1 and the 2. But man, Seth Trimble, I think he brings so much athletically. He's one of the more athletic guys in college basketball. So I'd love to see him come back. But I've heard that he has been testing it already and stuff. So we'll see. I think the best thing is we'll do a podcast maybe mid next week when we see some decisions go through. It's hard to talk about this. The one thing you need to know is Hubert's coming back. So despite anything you hear, we have to treat that as coming back. And then once a player or 2 enters, we'll have a better idea of what UNC has, and then see what they're. I mean, it's gonna be pretty volatile the next couple of days or next
James Brown?
couple of weeks.
Any James Brown love? Come on,
he's coming back. He's coming back. He could be the 7th man for UNC.
I love James Brown, right? We'll see where he's at 4th year, right?
He's got some potential.
He's got heart. He clearly loves Carolina. If you're willing to play your tail off and you love Carolina, that's good enough for me to keep you on the roster. Now, I'm not talking about starting him, but that's good enough for me to say he's got a spot here.
Yeah, for sure.
He plays.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna drop this little nugget. A little birdie told me. I think UNC makes some moves on some assistant coaches, so we might see some coaching changes here, which we haven't seen yet under Hubert Davis. So I know we mentioned this a couple of times. It just like I would love to see assistants that like want to move up in the ranks and like are fighting for their jobs, recruiting their ass off. Like you just don't. I don't know. You don't see much. I hate to call people out for their jobs, but I think there's a chance you may see some assistant coaching changes in the next week or two as well.
Interesting.
Well, you see Carolina's staff. As much as I love some of these guys on the bench, you don't see them getting recruited to take the Miami head coaching job. You don't see them being at risk to leave. So you're right, Ross. I think a shakeup would be good. Change of scenery.
You want people who want to move up and who like are fighting for their job, and like you think Jeff Lebo? Yeah, Jeff Lebo is like worried about. I mean, he's got a country club job. He's living in the Oaks, and he's recruiting a little bit, and he's hanging out. And you think he's really working his hardest for UNC? I don't know. Anyway,
it only matters if we're willing to go outside the state, right? If it's just like if we're getting rid of an assistant to bring in another UNC grad, then it doesn't matter, right? Like, there's a certain point, and I think it will be a broader conversation when we're having the same discussion next year as we exit the tournament early next year in 2026. Because, like, let's be honest, there's a certain conversation here where there's a distinct line between hiring within the family, because that's the Carolina way, and nepotism. And I hate to say it like that, because and God knows I don't want to draw the wrath of Carolina alums, but your goal as an organization is to hire the best people, not to hire the people you like.
Yeah, that's Mike. That's business school Mike talking right there. I love it. And we're the only program that does this. We're the only program that only hires ancestral alums of the university. Like Duke went out of the family. It's crazy. All-time hair day for Mike and Connor. Just great hair on this podcast. We're going to get out of here. Let Connor produce this, get this out ASAP, and we'll be back in touch. Mike, you got something else?
Yeah, I got one point. That's okay. I'll close on this. Yeah, sorry.
Hit us, Mike. Hit us.
I think the UNC athletic program is in probably one of the more dangerous spots that it's been in since probably the start of the scandal. All right. You just had Bill Belichick force down Bubba Cunningham's throat from the board of trustees and basically usurped his power in the coaching search. You have a basketball program that will only hire former UNC players and seems to have a distinct ceiling and a problem with changing and adapting to a new landscape. We've been on the bubble for 3 or 4 years, and flirting with disaster this year, missed out after being the number 1 ranked team preseason 2 years ago. Things are not good with regards to our major programs. And that's not slighting women's soccer, which, has been phenomenal. Women's lacrosse, field hockey, women's basketball has taken a massive step up. They all deserve a lot of credit. But when we're talking about profit-generating, revenue-generating sports, we are at a really dangerous crossroads. And Bubba Cunningham, whether you like him or not, is a good and respected athletic director across the sports landscape. And
maybe not anymore.
Well, I've heard rumblings that he's got a foot out the door especially after the football coaching search.
And you don't want that.
You don't want that. And so, is there a scenario where we are replacing a head basketball coach, an athletic director, and another football coach all within 3 years? Is that possible? Because that is very dangerous. So I'll leave it on that.
I will say this: the support for football is good to see. You indicate you can pay $10 million for a head coach and give a larger salary pool to assistants and show NIL support. Hiring a GM, support there, that's a good sign too. Yeah, I like Bubba Cunningham. I know him a little bit, but he hasn't had to make any hires because all his hires are chosen for him, or he's been, like you said, Mike, like the BOT went over his head to make hires. It's kind of like if I was him, I want to go somewhere where I actually make the decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We'll get out of here. It's a reaction podcast, so not too long. Connor, I'll send you the title in the description. We'll get out of here.
Let's do it.
And we'll talk to you next time. Next time, we might have players in the transfer portal. We won't do any spring football here, and we'll kind of do once a week maybe for the spring as the transfer portal rolls on. And thanks for listening, guys. Tell your friends. Rate, review, subscribe, follow anywhere you listen to this podcast. We appreciate support. It's just electric, man. Mike was electric. Connor was electric. The best hair. I mean, look at this. We all got great hairlines. Keep it going here.
Yes, sir.
We'll talk to you next time on Big Hitters Only.